Hey everyone, this is Bill from hardwareobvious.com.
And this is Max. How's it going, guys? This is going to be part 3 of our assembly, which will cover installing the heatsink. Now, whatever heatsink you may have, always be sure to look at the instructions and make sure you know that you're installing it correctly. But for this one, since our CPU did not come with an Intel stock heatsink, we needed to use an aftermarket one, so we have this Prolimatech Megahalem, and it's a pretty nice unit. It's very huge, and it has good mounting equipment, good cooling. So this guide, this segment of the guide is basically just going to be a tutorial for installing the Megahalem. So let's get started. Because it's such a beefy unit, we have a backplate here which distributes the weight across the back of the motherboard. And then a little square washer right here. Stick the black side down, and that leaves this, I think it's silicone little rubber thing that goes between the motherboard and the backplate so you don't have metal on metal. Just lift it up right here and line up the screw holes with the backplate.
Keep in mind that we have the motherboard placed on an anti-static bag, and on top of that a cardboard box. This is to prevent any sort of damage to the motherboard, and of course you always want to check that you're carrying no static electricity, and again that's to prevent any sort of damage to the motherboard.
Alright, now we have the backplate lined up so that each of the 4 screw holes are lined up perfectly with the motherboard. And the Prolimatech has 4 of these looking things. It's basically a double-sided screw, and the short side has a little silicone washer next to it, and that's again to prevent damage to the motherboard. So we're going to screw it short side down into each of the 4 holes. Alright guys, so I'm just tightening up the last one right here, and that looks good. Alright, so now there's 2 identical looking brackets right here, and as you can see there's little screw holes here for each of the socket sizes. So for this one, the only way it fits is the outer one, so you just stick that on there, and the other side. There we go. Alright. And now there's 4 washers here. There's a fatter side and then a side with the thumb screw little serrations right there. So just stick the fatter side down and screw each of these on top. Alright, now you're ready for applying the thermal paste and sticking the heatsink on. Alright guys, so now we're going to install the actual heatsink on, and for this specific one, the Prolimatech Megahalem, how it's mounted is it has a little cross bracket here, and it has 2 metal pegs on the bottom, and these fit into these slots on top of the block right there, and it's just going to slide in just like that, and then 2 screws go in here on each side and then go into these cross braces. And make sure you have your thermal paste applied, and make sure it's clean before you apply the thermal paste. And Bill's going to talk to you a little bit about that while I do this.
Alright, so for this build we're going to be using IC Diamond from Innovation Cooling, and depending on what thermal paste you choose, whether it's a high-end aftermarket thermal paste or it's just something that came along with your aftermarket heatsink, you want to look at the type of application method. For IC Diamond, they recommend putting a small rice-sized blob in the middle of your CPU, and then letting the heat and pressure of the heatsink to distribute the thermal paste. Now for other thermal compounds, it may be a credit card application style where you use a plastic card to spread the thermal paste evenly across the chip, but the most important thing is that you know which application method suits the thermal paste you're using. So now that Max has that small dab of thermal paste on, he's going to be putting on the heatsink carefully. Now remember that you want to line it up, the heatsink that is, on top of the chip and place it down firmly without lifting it up or moving it around. This is because you don't want any air bubbles coming in between the heatsink and the actual chip, because that will definitely hurt your CPU temperature performance. So now that Max has it on, he's just going to screw in a few screws. So I know some of you guys may be thinking of this. What might be the danger of installing such a big heatsink onto a motherboard? And the truth is, the manufacturers have already accounted for this, and for the majority of heatsinks, their mounting equipment is sufficient to keep it mounted on without any damage. However, there have been rare cases of things such as the motherboard warping or bending due to the weight. So if you are installing such a high-end heatsink, you definitely want to look into the manufacturer's guidelines. And if you're even more hardcore, look at how much pressure this CPU motherboard can take from the heatsink.
Alright guys, so we're done installing. It's on there very sturdily. And last thing we do before it's ready is you install the fans. And we have 4 fan clips right here. We're not going to install the fans in this video. We're going to do that later when we do all the power connections. But essentially how it works is that there's little slots in the side right here. These just slide in like that, and then they hook and grab the fans on the front, and they're actually very sturdy. So look forward to that. That'll be in a later video, and this has been the heatsink installation, the Prolimatech Megahalem. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.
Alright, see you guys.